Hello, this is RICKY, the Android guy. Hey guys, today we're going to go another side-by-side comparison between the top two selling phones of 2013, the iPhone 5S and the Galaxy S4. Now, obviously these are two of the biggest heavyweights, and like I said, no matter what you may think of other smartphones, these are the two top selling ones of this year. So we're going to see which one really is the best between the two. And yes, although I am called Ask the Android Guy, I always try to be partial to the benefits of one phone over another. Now let's go in and see which one's the best. Now first, when it comes to look and feel, these two are very different. When it comes to the iPhone, they have kept their same type of design for the most part from the iPhone 5 and just added a new color. However, this aluminum has been praised by many as one of the best feeling materials, so a lot of people feel that this really just is the perfect kind of feel that they want for their phone. Very lightweight, very much so lighter than the iPhone 5C. That was one of my biggest complaints about it. And the 5S definitely feels a lot more premium and goes well. Of course, you have the fingerprint reader icon as well that has changed from the original home button. So that has been the dramatic change. And the gold. One thing I would have liked to see is the gold kind of be in the front, because if you do have a cover, you can't tell you have the gold one except for this little gold ring, which kind of is making me wonder why people are kind of waiting for the gold one when they can get the other colors. Now when it comes to the Samsung, obviously most people hate the plastic. So if you're not a fan of this cheaper plastic backing, you're not going to be a fan of the Samsung's look and feel. Although almost as light as the iPhone, a lot of people don't like the feel of it. However, mine is very different from most because mine has a custom back. So mine's a tempered glass back as opposed to what most people have. But if you've seen my channel, you've seen with the S4, you can get aluminum backing, you can get Kevlar backing, whatever kind of backing you want, you really can get. But for the out-of-the-box look and feel, a lot of people are going to prefer the aluminum standing, and it was one of the biggest complaints about the S4. So with look and feel, it will go to the iPhone 5S. Now when it comes to web browsing, the very first thing you generally have to consider is the screen quality. So between these two, you have about an inch difference in screen. You have a 4-inch screen with the iPhone 5S that sports 1136 by 640 pixels, so it's under 720p, and it is 326 pixels per inch. However, on the S4, you do have a 5-inch screen, so again 1 inch bigger. However, the screen quality is much better. You have a 1080p screen with 441 pixels per inch, so you have about 100 pixels more on the screen quality, which is just makes sense because the S4 screen quality is a lot better, and it was one disappointing feature that did not change on the iPhone 5S this year. Now, when it comes to web browsing itself, let's take a look. And so, stop that, and 1, 2, 3. Okay, the iPhone 5 screen didn't touch. 1, 2, 3. There we go. And now we're just seeing which one finishes first. Fortunately, this iPhone 5 doesn't have service, so I put it on a 4G hotspot. So the iPhone 5 finished first this time, and the S4 is still loading. Interesting enough, I had filmed one that I had to reset, and the S4 was finished, and the S4 had finished first. So it kind of kept going back and forth. I've done multiple of these videos. You're seeing the finished one, but it didn't stay consistent, so I thought that was interesting that both of them kind of beat the other out depending on each time. Now, one thing I noticed on the iPhone versus the S4 in terms of how the web browsers work, both very smooth. You're not going to notice any kind of lag really with either one. The one thing that I do like about the S4 more so is that if you want to go all the way down to the iPhone screen, you kind of have to keep tapping down like this. On the S4, you kind of can just scroll all the way up and go all the way down very easily. This just makes it easier, say if a website you need to change any settings on it, or just kind of need to contact us or careers or anything like that that's generally on the bottom of the screen, you can get to it right away. Now in terms of pinch to zoom, Both do a very good job, of course. You're not going to notice any kind of real lag on it. Double tap. Both fairly quick. One more time. Let's try that again. One thing I don't like about the double tap of the iPhone, if you don't put it exactly at the same part, then what happens is you tend to be a little bit off. Now, one thing we kind of noticed with this one, the animation is quicker, and this animation's slower on the double tap, but they both kind of finish at the same time because this kind of has the squared like around it, and then it stops. So overall for web browsing, I'm kind of going to have to leave this at a tie. I did this before with the other models as well. The reason is because although the bigger screen's nice and the pixels per inch is nice, the iPhone 5 isn't really a bad web browsing. So because neither is really bad for web browsing and both, you know, still have very clear pixels overall, you know, it just, I kind of will give it to both. And this is simply because I don't want to be biased and I'm trying to be as fair as possible. So for that reason, I will give this a tie to both the 5S and S4 because they're both great for web browsing. Okay, so when it comes to music playing, one thing I always like to point out is where the speaker placement is, because I feel that's always very important. The iPhone 5 does have a really good speaker placement on the bottom, so if you lay it flat, it is not covered up. Although it does have stereo, you know me, I always say stereo doesn't mean anything unless they're really spread apart, so I consider that a mono sound coming out of stereo speakers. However, this one obviously just has one speaker and is on the back with the S4. One thing I don't like, just because if you do lay it flat, it is muffled up. So to be fair, I'm going to lift both up myself, and we're going to play them back and forth. So we're going to start with the 5S, then go to the S4, and then go back and forth once. And let's hear it.
Crazy how the game is changed. The lights go on, they scream my name. The curtain goes down, I remain the same. But all that money don't equal the price of fame. From LA to New York, Seattle to the Bay, West Side, night flights to Oahu, getting late. Yeah, go down to Vegas, they know where we stay. Last show in Cali, headed out to the state. Had my head in the clouds, now I'm sleeping first class, got a bed in the clouds. Hit my pops to pick me up, and he said he was proud. King shit with a beanie on instead of a crown. Yeah, counting on my blessings. Shout out to the Most High. Started from the bottom, now I'm sitting at the Most High. Keeps to the business, now I'm literally.
Alright, so hopefully you could hear that. I know it's always kind of difficult to see what the camcorder ends up picking up in the end. But here at the studio and passing it around, what kind of the general consensus was that yes, the S4 is going to be louder for most purposes for listening to music. Now in phone quality and everything like that, you can say it's arguable, but definitely when you're playing music, the speaker does do a better job. So for that reason, it would be to the S4, although keep in mind of the speaker placement that I spoke about earlier. Now, when it comes to video watching, you can pretty much guess who's going to win. Not only does the iPhone unfortunately not have a 720p screen, but the Samsung has a 1080p screen. So not to mention the pixels per inch being better, but you're going to have a better screen quality that can fill up a screen. So I've mentioned this before, if you play a 1080p video on an iPhone 5S from their own store, it actually will still have the bars because this is not an HD resolution screen. However, if you're playing it from the S4, you can actually get the full screen, which is just nice, of course. Also, I want to point out just the depth. If you can actually see, just say this wall, you have two color tones right here, where on here you're really having more of one. It kind of blends them in. And you'll notice that for even the background, just how everything kind of, you get more depth of color with here compared to here. And that's just because the LED screen versus LCD as well. Samsung does make these screens, but either way, it's just different, obviously, screen quality between LED and LCD. And now we're going to play it back. All right. And I always address this. The reason why I pick Samsung commercials is actually simply for the fact that I know they won't get flagged. Other commercials I've used have gotten flagged, so therefore I didn't use them. Now for my full camera comparison, please check out that video. I have a camera side-by-side comparison between the 5S and the S4, but just a brief run through what we generally found with the flash, without a flash at night, then during daytime, and then during flash and no flash with skin tones. So what we typically found was colors reproduced better with the flash at night with the iPhone 5S for the most part. However, the S4 generally gained a lot better details. And again, this is attributed to the 13 megapixel camera versus the 8 megapixel camera. In terms of low light without flash though, easily the S4 takes it, and that's just simply because the HDR mode is just no comparison to the S4's auto night detection mode. Now, when it comes to daytime photos, first of all, macro, the 5S typically seems to hone in on an area better compared to the S4 for macro taking. However, I did notice that although these are fairly comparable, the 5S does a better job of what photographers would typically do in keeping the focus on the forward than the backward, just for simple terms, without getting into aperture and everything, compared to the S4 actually keeps very good detail of the background and kind of your overall image. And I both have these on, normal centered weight. However, when it comes to the daytime photos, typically we do see a bit more, again, detail with the S4, just in terms of detail and clarity. It just overall, it's going to be better. And again, this is attributed to the megapixel difference. Lastly, skin tones. So we had a dark room without any light whatsoever, and this is what came out. So typically we saw the clarity again being better on the shirt. You can see I had a shirt specifically with text, so you can see the clarity difference. And then with skin tone, I'm kind of in between these two skin tones. I'm not as pale as this and not as dark as this. So I'm kind of in between these two skin tones, so I thought that was kind of interesting that neither did it perfectly, but one does a lighter skin and one does a darker skin. So it's up to you which one you rather have. Now for the next ones, there was almost no light being let through the room. This is how much light was being let through the room. That was the only light that was let through. So on automatic, this is what your photos would normally look like without a flash. However, we set both of them to the HDR mode, and then we set the S4 to its low light mode. So for the HDR mode, the iPhone 5S definitely has a better HDR mode. The S4 just doesn't do good with HDR. It's just not as good for using that. However, if you're just using HDR for low light, the low light on the S4 again just cannot be beat. It's just going to be the best low light. We've seen it compared to the HTC One and other phones. When it comes to low light without flash, you're never going to get better than the S4. All right, so for that reason, I still give this one a tie. Again, I'm just trying not to be as biased. I'm really trying to see that, neither one is a bad camera. I mean, I would gladly send any of these photos to people and they're good photos. So for that reason, I'm not going to fault either maker. Both are great cameras, so we will call this a tie depending on your preference. Now when it comes to gaming, both are going to be good. Both play very good games, and both pretty much have all the games that you can play on either device. However, I do give the slight advantage to the 5S overall. I really have to preface this with I hate playing on a smaller screen, but because this one does have the better graphics card, and because that graphics card has to pump out to a very lower resolution screen, it should pump it out a lot better and much more fluidly compared to the 1080p screen that has to be pumped out to this one with not as good of a graphics card as, say, the Note 3 has. So for that reason, I will give the gaming to the 5S. There's obviously a lot to be said about both. The S4 you can easily connect a PS3 controller to directly with just a micro USB to full USB adapter, and it works right out of the box. So you can play all of your games with a controller, which obviously is really good. But for the most part, I just, to be fair again, I would give it to the 5S in terms of gaming. Now, when it comes to battery life, it's just, again, it's an overall. It always depends on how you use the device. But overall, the S4 is rated for the much better battery life compared to the 5S, 10 hours versus 17 hours. And no matter how you kind of put it any which way, the thing is it just has a much bigger battery. You have a 2600 milliamp battery versus a probably 1550 milliamp battery now. I think they upped it another 100 milliamps. But basically, it's just a much bigger battery in comparison. Both processors do a very good job of buffering the battery down so that you don't need it to be that strong, and when you're not using it. So overall, both are very good. Obviously, one crucial advantage the S4 has to its battery life, though, is that it is removable. You can always take out the battery and replace it with another battery. So that is very nice, is where the 5S is built in. If the battery goes bad, that's it. You can replace it with, you can kind of add on with a Mophie case or something like that. But overall, you're going to kind of need to get it charged. And almost every person I know that has a 5S or 5 typically has a charger at home, not only at home, but at their job to try to kind of charge it during the day, or a Mophie case, or some type of way to charge their phone because they need to more than once per day. With the S4, you're typically going to get to the end of the day, or if not, definitely you will never get it go die on you during the work. Now, when it comes to the extras, both devices have their own. This is another, again, really close one where I really had to think about usefulness and practicality of the general consumer, as well as text to people that are using the smartphone for the first time. So overall, obviously the iPhone 5S has one main extra, and only really one extra, and that is the fingerprint reader, so that when you unlock your screen, you can actually just go like this instead of having to do your password. So that is a benefit that a lot of people have found to using this. I do kind of like it, but for me, I'm actually a person that doesn't use passwords. I just don't need to. I can wipe out my phone at any second if I need to, if I lost it. So I'm not really worried about passwords. If you're doing shady stuff, then obviously you might need to worry about passwords. No, but so the other main factor about it is with the S4, you do have a plethora of double apps. So you can have, first of all, obviously, you can have split screens. You can have two open simultaneously at the same time, which obviously a lot of people have found a lot of uses for. It's just really nice to have this. Now, while this isn't as useful as I would say on, you could say the or the Note series with a bigger screen, it's still fairly useful on the S4. Not to mention, obviously, you have other features which, although you might not use all of them, one I often use is the air call accept. So when someone calls, just wiping back and forth to pick up my calls, especially when I'm driving or when I'm cooking or eating. I've found that useful plenty of times. A lot of the other features, not as much, but that is one I found very useful. So which one is going to beat the extras? Overall, I kind of have to give it to the S4. Now, this is very close. This is the first iPhone that obviously has a big extra, but the fact that you can still remove the battery, that you can still add on storage, is a big factor that I feel that a lot of customers still want. They want to be able to add on their storage. They want to be able to replace their battery instead of their entire phone if something goes bad. So for that reason, they both have their extras. Whether how useful they are is always debatable because it depends on the person. Overall, though, I will say the extras should go to the S4. Alright, now when it comes to price point, these are obviously going to be, again, two differences. So where price point falls is going to be depending on the carrier you go with, really. Normal price point for both on contract would be $199. So both should be $199 for most 2-year contracts. However, you do find a difference in a couple of things. For one, if you bought the phone outright, the iPhone is going to be $649 wherever you go. However, it can be $639 for the S4, as well as 25 times 24 is 600, so 600 in some places. So not to mention that outright the price is cheaper with the S4, but you can imagine during the holidays, the S4 could drop its price point and go on sale for $149 or even $99 as the S3 did last year on Black Friday, or did it even go cheaper? But either way, Samsung is always open to sales, whereas on Apple, you're never going to get a cheaper price. This is the price that it is, plain and simple. So for that point, I do have to give the price to the S4, just because not only is it cheaper outright, but you can expect during the holidays the 2-year contract price will be cheaper than the iPhone 5S contract price. All right, so let's tally them up and see who won. When it comes to the look and feel, the iPhone 5S gives you the overall better look and feel, and that's just by popular demand. Most people like the look and feel of the iPhone 5S better compared to the S4. When it comes to web browsing, both are good web browsing. I could say, you know, the iPhone 5 loads a little bit quicker every now and then, and the S4 seems to scroll down a little bit easier. But at the end of the day, both are good web browsers. You're going to be happy with both web browsing. Music and movies overall is going to be better with the S4. For music, the speaker is louder. For movies, the screen is definitely clearer, definitely sharper, and just more of a pleasure to watch a movie on that device. When it comes to camera quality, neither is a bad device. Both are really good cameras. And again, watch my full in-depth camera comparison to find out more. When it comes to gaming, the iPhone 5S just has a better graphics card, and because it doesn't have a HD screen, it will actually pump it out smoother, so it's going to tend to move quicker and have less lag on high-end games compared to any other device, really, just because of that. In terms of battery life, it is going to go to the S4. It just has an overall better battery life for day-to-day usage. Extras will go to the S4 as well, although this one's very close. The fingerprint reader is obviously very big on the 5S, and it's caught a lot of people's attention. However, the S4 has this plethora of extra features, but the thing that tipped it over the scale was the removable battery and expandable storage, so you're not stuck with what you got when you first bought it. And the price point. Price point of the S4 is cheaper outright when you buy it, and you can expect this holiday season for it to go on sale, whereas the 5S will stay the same price. So there you have it. Overall, both of these phones are great. Both are going to be happy with when you buy either one. However, overall, the S4 seems to outrank the 5S in terms of overall categories. Alright guys, if you liked this video or found it helpful, please give a thumbs up. Thank you for watching. This has been RICKY, the Android Guy.